Most of the times when we are invited to a wedding or something similar to it, we think of what we are going to wear, and sometimes we think of whether we can compromise our hijab or we can keep it as it is. And sometimes we choose to, or most of the times we choose to keep our hijab away because of that party or that wedding, but then hoping that we are going to be happy, hoping that we are going to just be okay with it, but then we attend this wedding or this party with some guilt inside us, knowing what was right for us to do, but then we chose something different. We can't stop thinking of what if death comes to us in that state we dropped our right hijab. We are just in a state that we may not be comfortable if the angel of death comes and takes our souls at that time. How many times have we heard of people passing away when going to a wedding, or when in the wedding itself, like you happen to experience somebody's death and wedding at the same time. And I'm not specifically talking about the bride and the groom here. I'm talking about us who are going for that wedding. Like you hear about somebody who was helping their friend get ready, maybe by making their hair or applying makeup on their faces, choosing an outfit for them, and then they go to that wedding together, and then they sleep next to this person, but then in the morning they wake this person up, because most of the times we don't pray actually when we attend weddings. So we try to wake this person up perhaps at sunrise for them to go and do what is supposed to be done, and most of the times it's not usually prayer. And then we find out that this person is no more, like they have died in that state. And I'd like us to pause for a moment and think of what if this person was you and me. Are we really ready for us to face Allah in that condition where we have attended a very good thing? Because even the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever among you is invited to a wedding or something similar to it, then they should attend. So it is something that we are encouraged to attend, but then here we are, our death comes in a state that is not pleasing to Allah. So let's pause there and think of what if I'm this person who has died in that state. Because when we look at the Quran, we have guidelines on how Muslim men and women should dress, okay? And even when we look at the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ has characterized the dressing of a Muslim. So it is something that has been revealed. It's not just something that is a policy from nowhere. It is something that our Creator wants us to wear. And there are so many verses talking about dressing. There are so many verses talking about Allah making clothing as a mode of modesty, but also verses talking about the other form of modesty, which is taqwa, which is lowering our gaze. But specifically what we want to talk about today is this other form of modesty, which as days go by, we tend to lose its meaning and we tend to compromise it and forget that it is actually Allah who wants us to look like this. The first verse we are talking about here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet to tell the believing women that they should put on jalabibs. And when we look at, as I was doing my research of knowing what a jalabib is, it is actually an outward clothing, and from the description it should be, a jalabib is something that is loose. So one of the tips that we want to consider when looking for an outfit for a wedding or anything, then is that it should be first loose, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it specific that we should wear something loose. And then some of the clothing we wear is an exact jalabib, like they are totally loose, like a dress that is not fitting. Most of the clothing we have, the abayas, are actually just serving this purpose of a jalabib. So the first characteristic in a cloth you want to choose for this wedding, it has to be loose. It can be of any color, but the first characteristic here is that it should be loose. And there's also another verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts by addressing men regarding the modesty, and he tells the believing men that they should lower their gaze and cover their nakedness or their private parts. And the hadith and our scholars, alhamdulillah, have gone broad into explaining the nakedness of a man. So when we are choosing, when a man is choosing an outfit for a wedding or anything, then they have to make sure that that outfit does not expose their nakedness. Yeah. And apart from the act of men covering their private parts, there is also something that Allah highlights, which is the hijab of the eyes. He tells the believing men to lower their gaze. So this is the hijab of the eye. Like when you see something that is indecent or something that can cause immorality from your end, then it is something that does not deserve a second eye. It is something that you see for the first time and you drop down that gaze. And there are so many hadiths talking about how a Muslim man should look like, from how this person decides to shave their hair. There is this famous hadith that the Prophet prohibits Muslim men from shaving part of their hair and leaving part of it. And he encourages Muslim men, if you are going to shave, then shave all of it. And if you are going to leave, then leave all of it. Yeah. So there isn't being in between, like leaving a portion of your head. So we tend to want to be smart in a wedding, but then our smartness should be in accordance to whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. And then another thing to highlight in the dressing of the brothers is avoiding chains. I'll highlight some of the hadith directly, the hadiths that talk about not wearing things that resemble that of women. Like Muslim women or the brothers should avoid wearing chains. They make them resemble the female gender, and these are the things that the females are allowed to wear on the contrary. So you can look for a good kanzu or maybe a suit and a blazer. Just look perfectly okay, so that, and your hair is taken care of, you have your beard, mashallah, so that in case Allah decides to take you in that state, then you are comfortable, you are a soul that is willing to go to their Lord in the best state. So the second, the other part of the verse talks about the Muslim woman now. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells the Muslim woman that she should lower her gaze and cover her nakedness. Yeah. And the verse goes ahead and it talks about the humur or the khimar. And when I did my research here, the khimar is something that basically covers the head. And we are told that in the ancient times, or the pre-Islamic period, the Arab women used to wear scarves on their heads, but then they were not what Allah is describing. They would put on scarves on their head, but then their necks will be open, their ears will be open. So Allah wanted to highlight something specific in the dressing of Muslim women by saying that they should lower their humur, like the hijab that they wear should actually come down. So when you are choosing an outfit, or when we are choosing an outfit for a wedding, we want something that is exactly as what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing. When we looked at the jalabib, it is something that could come all the way from up to down, loose, or it could start from the shoulders downwards, but it's loose. But when we look at the humur, this is something that comes from the head specifically, and it goes past the neck, it covers the neck, it covers the chest. So this is what we should look at when selecting an outfit. Another thing that applies and we can use this when checking for a dress for the wedding or for anything. Yeah, basically hijab is our day-to-day life, so it can fit anywhere. And these characteristics, some of them have been highlighted in the verses, like the bigger part of them have been highlighted in the verses, but also in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ describes the dressing of a Muslim man and a Muslim woman. And one of them is that it should not resemble that of the non-believers or that of the kuffar. So that is one. And then the other thing is that it should not portray arrogance. And also we should not put on things that make us look like we are so needy. Like, we are encouraged to be smart as Muslims when we look at the dressing code of the Prophet ﷺ, especially in celebrations, especially in the Friday prayers. He just dressed outstandingly. So we are encouraged to dress in an outstanding manner. You shouldn't dress in a way that, like, it doesn't mean that when you are pious, you should dress like you are weak or something. Like, piety is not portrayed in that way. Piety is portrayed by you adopting what the Prophet used to do in terms of dressing. Like, dress lively, dress in a certain way as long as you follow the hijab rules. The other thing is it should not be tight, and we have talked about this in the verse where Allah tells us to wear jalabibs, for the Muslim women. And also for the Muslim men, it should not expose your nakedness. There is also this verse we have read that you should cover your private parts, and that includes the cloth not being too tight, right? Yeah. So the other thing I forgot to mention is about adornments. And in the last ayah that I talked about, where Allah tells the believing women that they should lower their gaze and guard their private parts and lower their humor, he also talks about the characteristics of the hijab, and he says that it should not contain adornments. So, and even the Prophet ﷺ emphasized on our clothing that it should not contain these perfumes that can cause a distraction in our society, right? So we need to keep that in mind when we are choosing this dress code. Yeah. And also, basically adornment. So it should not be too attractive. And so basically that is the type of clothing we want to adorn when attending a wedding, because one thing, we don't know where our death is coming, and we want to face Allah in a better way, in a way that we are proud, in a way that even those taking us to the graves will be like, she ended her life well, and we hope that Allah takes her to a good, or him to a good place. So you could be probably thinking of, now, what is this cloth that I can wear? I mean, there are so many options. As long as it's something that is loose, the color doesn't matter. As long as it's something that is loose and it fits the characteristics, why not try it, inshallah. So that is it, guys. I hope you have picked something from today's discussion. Please don't hesitate to comment if you have benefited from this video in any way. If you have recommendations on the types of video and the topics that I should make on next, please put your comments down below. Please just give this video a thumbs up, share it with your families and friends, support a sister, bring in more subscribers. Thank you so much for watching. Ma'assalam.